guys, so welcome to the first in my Harry Potter and Classics series. If you haven't seen my brief introduction to these videos, in each video I'm going to take you through one of the Harry Potter books from the Philosopher's Stone all the way to the Deathly Hallows and explore some of the characters and creatures who have their namesakes in ancient history and classical mythology. If you want a little bit more detail about the series, then I will leave the introduction in the description box down below because I don't want to waste any more time rambling on. I want to get into the crux of the video, and those are the characters. For today's video, I even have my trusty ancient Greek copy of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, aka Harrius Potter kai he tu Philosopher lithos. And I will say this is also available in Latin for those of you who want to go full on nerd. Many of you probably already know that J.K. Rowling was herself a classics student, and it's clear to see where her education has influenced her writing. From the very beginning of the Harry Potter series, characters, big and small, pop up with names very clearly taken from the ancient myths and history of antiquity. One of the first characters that Harry meets when he is no longer a baby has in fact an ancient name, and that is of course Daedalus Diggle, the best character of the whole series. Ignoring Daedalus's surname for now, Daedalus is the name of a character from ancient Greek mythology. Daedalus was a famous inventor who served the king Minos of Crete. Some of his inventions I'm sure will be familiar to you. For one, he was responsible for the creation of the labyrinth in which the Minotaur was kept. But going back further even than that, Daedalus is in a way responsible for the birth of the Minotaur. If you're not familiar, the Minotaur was the product of Pasiphae, Minos' wife, the Queen of Crete's sexual encounter with a bull who was in fact the god Poseidon in disguise. In order to seduce the bull that Pasiphae had determined such a lust for, she went to Daedalus and asked him to create her a bull suit that she could seduce the bull with. And there was one of Daedalus's early inventions that then led to the birth of the Minotaur. King Minos then required somewhere to keep the creature that his wife gave birth to without offending the gods, so Daedalus created for the king the labyrinth in which the Minotaur was kept. Now, King Minos didn't want news getting out there of Daedalus's skill and what was going on the island, so he trapped Daedalus and his young son Icarus in a tower, so they were unable to escape Crete. You may recognise that name, Icarus, the son of Daedalus. Yes, one of Daedalus's other inventions were in fact the wings that he created for himself and his son in an attempt to flee Crete. He created wings using feather and wax, and he and his son set flight from the tower to cross over the sea. His one rule, however, to his son was that he was not to fly too close to the sun, or else the wax binding the feathers together would melt, in what is often told as a bit of a cautionary tale. Now, Icarus did of course fly too close to the sun, the wax melted and he fell to his death. Daedalus, however, survived their flight, and that is the origin of the name Daedalus, who is in the very beginning of the Harry Potter series. It is possible to read the Daedalus and Icarus story in full in Ovid's Metamorphosis. A character you're probably all familiar with, who is in the books from the very beginning, from the days of Harry being a baby, is Minerva McGonagall, teacher of transfiguration at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Now, Minerva takes her name from a Roman goddess. Minerva was the Roman equivalent of the Greek goddess Athena. Minerva and Athena were goddesses of both wisdom and warfare, and unlike the kind of brutal, unrelenting war of Ares, they ruled over elements such as strategy. But Minerva's warlike nature certainly shouldn't be underplayed. She was an incredibly strong goddess and one of her father Zeus's favourites. Now, Minerva was conceived by Zeus or Jupiter, whether you're looking at Greek or Roman mythology, who had sex with the goddess Metis. But afraid of his own children's power, he decides to swallow Metis whole before she is able to give birth to their child. This then leads Jupiter in Roman mythology to have the worst headache of his life. So he goes to Vulcan, the god of craftsmanship, and Vulcan smacks Zeus bang in the middle of his head in order to relieve his headache. But what this head cracking results in inadvertently is the birth of Minerva. Minerva is then very much seen as the daughter of her father and not truly having a mother. There are, of course, hundreds of myths about Minerva being one of the biggest and most important of the Greek and Roman gods, so I can't go into all of them here, but that is the origin of Minerva. And amongst her being known for her wisdom and warfare, she was also known as the virgin goddess, as she rejected male company in the sexual sense and chose not to have sex. Unlike her fellow virgin goddesses, however, Minerva isn't rejected from the traditional spaces that she occupies in the way, say, someone like Artemis or Diana is. But like I mentioned, there's too much one could say on the topic of Minerva, so let us move on to our third character and one of the most important characters of the whole series, no, not Ron, Hermione. Yes, Hermione too takes her name from a character of Greek mythology. Hermione was the daughter of Helen, yes, Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman to have ever lived. Hermione was the daughter of Helen and her first and original husband Menelaus. She was the princess of Sparta, and during her younger years she was betrothed to her cousin Orestes, the son of Agamemnon, Menelaus's brother. However, during the Trojan War, Agamemnon makes a deal with the son of Achilles, Neoptolemus, and instead promises his daughter to him. So after the war is over, Hermione marries Neoptolemus, but constantly feels threatened in their marriage by their now slave Andromache. Andromache was Princess of Troy, wife of Hector, and was taken as a slave by Neoptolemus at the end of the war. Unable to conceive a child, Hermione believes Andromache has put a curse on her and demands that Andromache is killed. When those around her refuse to kill Andromache, she asks her cousin Orestes, her original betrothed, to come and steal her away from Neoptolemus. Orestes does so, and she runs away with him, and they marry and have a child. You can read some incidents from Hermione's story in Euripides' plays Andromache and Orestes, or in Ovid's Heroids. But before Harry even meets Hermione, there's another student of Hogwarts who he encounters on his travels in Diagon Alley with Hagrid. Yes, that is of course Draco Malfoy, and Draco too takes his name from antiquity. In this instance, however, Draco is actually the name of a real historical figure of Greek history. Draco was alive in the 7th century BC and was the original lawmaker or legislator of Athens, who set down the first law code of the city-state. Draco's laws are remembered for being particularly harsh, violent and brutal towards those that did wrong in Athens, and they were in fact reversed by the lawmaker Solon years later, who replaced Draco's laws with a set of his own laws, minus the homicide law, which remained the same for a little while longer until the end of the 5th century BC. And his name is also, of course, the origin of the word draconian. And you can read more about Draco's innovations and laws in the Politics and Constitution of Athens by Aristotle. I think already with characters like Minerva and Draco, it's possible to see why J.K. Rowling perhaps picked these names, as they fit with their characters. They hint towards their characters' personalities and roles within the story. Another character who's introduced in the Philosopher's Stone, whose name hints at his role at Hogwarts, is Argus Filch. In ancient Greek mythology, Argus was a 100-eyed giant. One of his main roles in mythology was as the guard of Io. Once Zeus took a fancy to the beautiful young woman Io and went to have an affair with her. In order to prevent the wrath of his wife Hera, he turns Io into a heifer or a cow. Io, now disguised as a heifer, Hera persuades Zeus to gift her the cow, and then sets the giant Argus to watch over Io to prevent Zeus from having access to her. Zeus, however, sends the god Hermes to distract and eventually kill the giant Argos, in order to steal away Io back to him. Argus, also known as Argus Panoptes, like I mentioned, had 100 eyes, Panoptes meaning all-seeing, which hints a little bit at Argus Filch's role as caretaker and watchman of the students, constantly on the lookout for them breaking rules. Argus and Io's story is told in full in Ovid's Metamorphosis. But Minerva McGonagall isn't the only teacher in Harry's first year at Hogwarts whose name is inspired by antiquity. No, in fact, Harry's arch nemesis amongst the faculty, Severus Snape, in fact, takes his name from a member of Roman history. That is Septimus Severus. Septimus Severus was a Roman emperor who served between the years of 193 and 211 AD. He became emperor after successfully killing the current emperor Julianus, who had served for less than a year during an unstable time for the Roman emperor. As you can tell from the date, Septimus Severus went on to rule the Roman Empire for a relatively long time in terms of the emperors. His rule marks the beginning of the Severan dynasty, which follows with his two sons and eventually ends with Alexander Severus in 235 AD. To read more about the history of the Emperor Severus, however, you might want to check out Cassius Dio, who was a Roman historiographer whose histories tell the story of Rome from its foundation by the mythical Romulus and Remus all the way down to 229 AD. But it's not just characters who take their inspiration from classics in Harry Potter. There are also plenty of mythological creatures that manifest themselves in these stories. One of the most striking ones in the Philosopher's Stone is that of Fluffy, who is not in fact called Fluffy in Greek mythology, but is known as Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the underworld. Cerberus was, of course, the pet, essentially, of Hades, god of the underworld, and his job was to prevent the dead from escaping back into the world of the living. Possibly Cerberus's most famous role in a Greek myth is in the 12th labour of Heracles. After Heracles kills his wife and children in a fit of madness set on him by the goddess Hera, he is set to complete 12 tasks as penance. The 12th and final labour, which is supposedly impossible, was for him to steal Cerberus from the underworld, which he does in fact manage to do, successfully completing all 12 of his labours. And like many myths, you can read this in the Library of Greek Mythology by Apollodorus. One of the other mythological creatures that pops up in the first Harry Potter book are, of course, the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. However, I'm going to save my discussion of centaurs until Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, as I feel like they play a far more prominent role in that story, and there's plenty to say about those creatures. But those are all of the characters and creatures I had to talk to you about in this episode of Harry Potter and Classics. I do apologise if I've left any characters or creatures off this list. I am only one person, and hopefully this has still been an interesting video for those of you who were interested. But do watch out for my second instalment in this series, which will be on Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, of course, which I hope you will also enjoy. If you would like to support me in making these and all of my other videos, I do have a Patreon account which is linked down below and is only for those of you that have a spare dollar, but I thought I would mention it in case it was something you were interested in. But do share your comments and feedback on this first episode in the series down below. I would love to hear them. If you're interested in reading more Greek and Roman mythology in the original books, then I do have a video on where you can read that I'll link down below, as well as a few of my other videos on ancient history and mythology. But until next time guys, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!